Hey YouTube, this is my in-floor water heater video. Thought I'd explain a little bit about how I heat my shop when it gets really cold outside. About 13 years ago, I put this system in. It's very basic, and I wanted to do it very cheap because I was on a really tight budget. And I had this used Titan water heater that was used for about a year in an apartment house, and it ended up sitting in a milk crate for 6 months, and I picked it up one day and I thought, I'll try this. So I ran this unit here for about 13 years after it had been used for a year. And it worked out okay. It's not inexpensive to run all the time, but it takes up no room. And this unit here was $130. So I recently replaced it with a new one, and they're up to $225 now. Could have repaired the old one, but I don't think they sell the analog controls anymore. And to be really honest, I tried to fix it myself and I kind of made some sparks happen, so I thought I'll just replace it. Let me give you a quick tour. Okay, here's the system in its entirety. There's not a lot going on here. Let me explain. The water heater senses flow, turns itself on. Okay, that's fairly simple. The thermostat has a bimetal element. When it closes and makes up the switch, when it meets calls for heat, it is basically a 120 volt switch that turns on the pump. So when the room gets cold, the pump turns on, that starts flow, the water heater senses flow and turns itself on. Right now, the water heater is putting out 112 to 120. These little dials are not the most accurate indicator in the world, but they let you know it's doing something. So basically, pop-off valve. This is not the same pop-off valve that is on the top of a lot of domestic water heaters. This is one that's designed for radiant floor heat, if I remember. Again, I did this over a decade ago. Spiro vent. I didn't go cheap here. At the time, this was $100. I don't know what a spiro vent costs now. Expansion tank. In the fall, when I turned the unit on the first time, I checked the pressure on the Schrader valve on the bottom, and I read it about 6 to 10 pounds of PSI. I did use a few shark bites. Just in case something should die, I can change it out without getting out the torches. This is a 3-speed taco pump. I leave it on high most of the time anymore, but what I did was I took out the knockout and put this LED bulb in here so that I could tell that the pump is running from inside the house. When the garage is dark, you see a warm glow, you know that your water heater is running. Also with security cameras, I can just manage it at a glance. I think nowadays I could probably just use an Alexa device and probably eliminate some of this stuff. I don't know. I only have 2 loops in the floor. The garage is 24 by 30, so I ran a couple 300-foot loops. A third loop may have been better, but this seems to actually function. I have a boiler drain, a shut-off valve, and a boiler drain. To initially fill the system, I closed that valve, hooked up a pump into a 5-gallon bucket, pumped fluid through the system, left this open with the hose going back into the bucket, and I let the thing run for a while until all the air bubbles were gone and there was no more voids in the system. At that point, I simply closed the valves and then connected everything together. No big deal. Here's the big deal. 60 amp circuit breaker. Even at low temperature, it's still drawing 40 amps. Right now, I just checked it, it's pulling 40 amps through there. This water heater requires a 60 amp breaker and some big expensive wire. That's kind of the hidden cost. And my circuit panel is on the other side of the shop. It's 25, 30 feet away, plus elevation changes going up and over through the attic and down. If you're going to put this near your panel, not a bad way to go, because your copper runs are not going to be nearly as expensive. Now, drawing 40 amps, putting out 120 degrees of water temperature, the delta, my return temperatures, as the unit runs for a while, I'll get to about 25 to 30 degrees in differential. Not so bad. I think this water heater is probably overkill for what I'm doing here. 720 square foot slab. no groundwater inlet temperature. The inlet temperature is pretty high. So at the end of the day, for the few hours a day that this thing actually runs, I probably could have went with a considerably smaller unit that would not require a 60 amp breaker in the breaker box and the huge gauge wire that's running clear across my shop. Yep, I just filled it with RV antifreeze. Some people say, oh, you can't do that. Well, I did, and it's been running for 12 years with no problems. There's already water in this, and it's already somewhat reduced compared to the commercial stuff that you buy for floor heat. But again, I used maybe 4 gallons in this system, and I didn't see the point in spending $100 or more at the time on 5-gallon bucket of the fancy floor heater stuff when this was like $2 a gallon. So what's it cost to run? It can be a lot. I'm not going to lie. If you try to use this as your sole source of heat, drawing 40 amps as it's running, it's probably going to run probably an hour or two at night. And then you're going to be dealing with whatever your math and your cost per kilowatt hour say it's going to cost. Where I live, electricity is still reasonably priced, but I don't use this as a primary source of heat. I only use this to keep the floor from getting too cold. And that's really the magic of a system like this. If your floor is 60 degrees, if your slab is 55 degrees, heating it with another source is a lot easier because everything in the shop is going to be 55 to 60 degrees. The tables, the tools, the wrenches, all of the things that sit on the floor are going to not need to be heated from your other heat source just to be able to work in the shop. So would I build this again if I was building a new shop? I might. I would certainly always recommend putting PEX in your floor. If you're going to be laying on the ground a lot, having a 55 to 60 degree slab is really nice in the wintertime. Because no matter what you do, if your slab is cold because the temperature crept in from the cold ground, the frozen ground creeps in here, you can heat the air all you want. It's still going to feel cold when you're down on the ground trying to work on your car. But the mini split systems are really efficient. If you keep your garage warm all the time and never let it get cold, you might be able to get by with a mini split. But the thing is, the inexpensive mini splits really don't like to run below 5 degrees outside. And if it gets into that below zero thing, making sure you kept your slab from getting frozen in the first place really makes for a comfortable environment. But I hope this helps to some degree. Maybe you can get something from it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the thing down there. All right, man. Have a good one.